Sad day, everyone. Welcome in to the PHNX Diamondbacks podcast. My name is Jesse Friedman alongside Jacob Franklin, who is joining us today in place of Derek Montilla, who is still off at Disneyland. But you all have heard the news. David Peralta has been officially moved to the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for 19-year-old catcher Christian Cerda. Jacob, I know you've been cheering for this baseball team for a long time.
A long time.
Pretty sad day.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, it's hard to see a fan favorite go, but it's something that I think a lot of us have expected for a majority of this season. Only because when you look at the system, they've got 7 or 8 guys that probably all deserve time in the outfield, and it's hard to justify giving a 35-year-old guy that's only got 2 months left on his contract time over some of the kids that might deserve to develop a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think this move is as much about clearing that space for other guys as it is about what they got in return. And yeah, Brandon Buckingham says, it's Corbin Carroll season, right? There is potentially some excitement that can come along with this deal, just given the fact that this does open the door for potentially Corbin Carroll. We're not totally sure if that's going to happen yet. Maybe the Diamondbacks call up Stone Garrett. There's a few different routes they can go on that front. But let's jump in real quick to who the Diamondbacks got in return in this deal. Christian Cerda, a 19-year-old catcher. Jacob, not exactly a headliner, sort of a prospect in the traditional sense. He is not on the Rays top 30 list, but he is a 19-year-old catcher. He's down in the rookie league. The Diamondbacks don't have a whole lot of depth at the catcher position in their minor league system. And so this, helps them add some depth in that regard and have a guy down there who could come up, be a number of years from now, probably 3 or 4 years away, but some potential to contribute in the future. His numbers this year in the rookie league do look pretty good for what that's worth. I mean, we're talking like 70 plate appearances here, but he's hit 315. He has a 464 on base percentage, a 515 slugging percentage. So the numbers for Christian Cerda look pretty good. He's a guy the Diamondbacks apparently tried to sign a couple of years ago. The Tampa Bay Rays wound up getting him instead. So this is a guy the D-backs have had interest in for a while, but he's not on the top 30 list. And like you said, Jacob, I mean, David Peralta is almost 35 years old. And at this point, he's under contract for 2 more months. You're just not going to get that much for a guy who's almost 35, who's under team control for 2 more months, and who also is like, David Peralta is like a good player, right? But he's not like a great player, right? He's not the guy who's going to put the Tampa Bay Rays over the top in their World Series run all by himself, right? He's just not that guy. And so for everyone looking at the return for this trade and, feeling disappointed about what the Diamondbacks got, I certainly understand where you're coming from, but I also don't think the Diamondbacks did super poorly or anything in this trade. I don't think they embarrassed themselves. You just weren't going to get much for David Peralta to begin with.
No, you're sending a guy that's probably going to be a 4th or 5th outfielder for a team. He's going to come in. He's going to fill in positions. He's played a lot of left field here in Arizona, but he can play some right field as well. So he'll probably get some spot starts in Tampa Bay. But you're just not going to get much. And so the fact that you even got it's like Michael said in the chat. He said you're getting a lottery ticket, right? You're getting a 19-year-old kid that's shown some flashes over his 70 plate appearances in Tampa. Apparently, like you said, I didn't know this. They had interest in him earlier, and they tried to sign him. But it was a necessary evil, I would say.
Yeah. And not to say in any way that this is I don't know. I think everyone is sad. Josh Hunt is sad, and we're all sad with you.
Except Derek.
Josh
Derek's
Hunt,
in Disneyland.
Derek is in Disneyland. He is as happy as he has ever been right now. But yeah.
Not sure if I don't know Derek's reaction. Maybe this is more correct. Maybe we're just reacting to Derek here.
I definitely don't think surprise Derek is the right one, because we've sort of been expecting this deal for a while, but potentially angry Derek, maybe sad Derek would be the most fitting one of all. I don't know if we have a sad Derek graphic, but is maybe it's in there somewhere.
We do have a sad Derek.
There
Derek.
It is.
Derek's in Disney, so I just figured being sad wasn't on the table.
Yeah. He's just living in happy ignorance right now with what's going on in the Diamondbacks world. But yeah, I mean, this is a sad day for the Diamondbacks, right? I mean, David Peralta, I would make the case that David Peralta is the face of this franchise, even though he maybe hasn't been the team's best player for the last couple of years. His brand is something that just resonates with pretty much every fan that follows this baseball team. Everybody loves the freight train. Everybody loves his infectious smile. Everybody loves just everything that he's meant to this franchise over the last few years. And so, even though this is something we sort of expected, even though I don't think the return is something to scoff at or be embarrassed about, or wanting to fire Mike Hazen over, I don't think those are appropriate reactions given the situation. But David Peralta was a legend here in Arizona, and I remember, Jacob, back in 2014, I think I watched one of David Peralta's first games in a Diamondbacks uniform. And I just remember how hard he hit the ball. Like there was just like a different sound coming
Yeah,
off the
for
bat
sure.
with David Peralta than with anyone else. And nobody really knew who he was. Like he was kind of old when he debuted. He was like 26 or 27. There were these stories about him working at a McDonald's like 2 years prior and being a pitcher with the St. Louis Cardinals. It's an incredible story, and nothing can take away from that.
The one thing I am really sad about that we never really got to see, more than I think he maybe one time, him getting to pitch in a blowout game, because we heard so much about his pitching career, and I think we only ever got to see it maybe one time. That's something you could probably check me on, but he's been a staple here in Arizona for a long time, and I actually got into a little bit of an argument with Shearston yesterday in the office about who I would consider the face of the franchise now. And she was on board the David Peralta train, and I think a lot of people would be.
Sure.
um, at this point in his career, I felt like he had maybe passed that. From a marketability standpoint, the team loved to put him forward for their community events. The Arizona community surrounded him, but I felt like maybe he had moved past that point of being available for the face of the franchise, right? You've got all these kids, Alec Thomas, Corbin Carroll, all of them are
Sure.
about to come up and shine, right? So maybe it was time for a new face of the franchise. Cattell gets a lot of notoriety for how good he is,
Right.
but truly, in the heart of Arizona Diamondbacks fans, it's hard to replace a guy like David Peralta, just from the fact that he was more than just an on-field presence. He was an extremely important off-field presence here in Phoenix.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was probably a changing of the guard that was happening in that regard, right? Just the fact that David Peralta was aging a little bit, and he probably wouldn't have stayed in that position as the face of the franchise for that much longer. I did check, and you are correct. We did see David Peralta pitch once.
One
This was
time.
last year. He went an inning, gave up 4 hits and 3 runs and a home run. So. Not great stuff from David Peralta. Maybe it's a good thing that he decided to play corner outfield instead. But yeah, I mean, he is meant just so much to this franchise, regardless of whether you want to call him the face of the franchise or not. He has meant a ton
Right,
to this
right.
community, to this baseball team, and he's had some really darn good seasons. I mean, if you go back a few years, back in 2018, David Peralta hit 293 with 30 home runs. He won a Silver Slugger Award that year. The year after that, in 2019, he won a Gold Glove Award. So
Still
he's
don't know how
flashed
that
some.
happened, but yeah,
Yeah, we're still a little confused about how he won the Gold Glove Award, but the metrics have always sort of favored him, even if the eye test
right,
doesn't
right,
necessarily make it feel like he's an elite defender out there. But he's just been a steady presence. I mean, he's a career 283 hitter with an 803 OPS. I mean, to be that guy and to do it as consistently as
right,
he has for nearly a decade, coming up in 2014 with the Diamondbacks, and doing it all with one team. Like, you don't see that many guys these days stay
right.
with the same team for 9 years like David Peralta has.
It's an insane flyer story, right? Baseball is
Yeah.
a very weird sport in that oftentimes you don't get guys that just come out of nowhere. Like there's some things, in football you hear stories of guys bagging groceries. I mean, look at Kurt Warner,
Yeah.
leading the Cardinals to a Super Bowl, winning a Super Bowl with the Rams. But you don't oftentimes get a guy like David Peralta that's playing independent ball, pitching, doesn't really work out, and comes back later in life as a hitter and all of a sudden puts
Yeah.
up numbers like the numbers that you just read off. That's not something you see on a consistent basis. So I think the story in and of itself is one of the most incredible stories that's been in baseball for the last 10 years. Unfortunately, he's been in Arizona where you don't get as much maybe press as other teams would. So not many people would
Yeah.
probably know that story about David, but it's, people in Arizona know that about him. And I think that's part of the reason that everybody kind of circled around him to begin with.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I thought it was cool to see Talkin' Jake react to this on
Yeah.
Twitter. He expressed his devastation that the freight train was no longer in Arizona. Of course, we had Talkin' Jake on our show a couple of months ago, and he talked about his love for David Peralta. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the Diamondbacks decide to go from here in terms of who they call up, how they fill this roster spot. Obviously, Christian Serta is not going to come onto the major league roster, so the Diamondbacks have an open spot here that they need to fill, and there's a lot of guys who could fill that spot. I think Stone Garrett is the first name that comes to my mind as someone who's probably been deserving of this
Yeah. He
opportunity for a
rakes.
while. He rakes. He
Yeah, he
absolutely
rakes.
does. Corbin Carroll is going to be the trendy name, of course, and
I don't think it's
I've
going to happen.
I also don't think it's going to happen, at least not right now. I've expressed a fair amount of optimism that we see Corbin Carroll at some point this year, which now I feel like I may have pressed the gas pedal a little bit too much in that regard because I'm not so sure we're going to see that. So for anyone who thought that I told you that was for sure happening, I never said it was for sure, but
Liar,
we'll have
Jesse.
to see.
Liar.
We'll have to see how things pan out. I wasn't wrong yet, okay, Jacob. There's no way that I was wrong at this point, or we still have like 2 more months to see how this plays out. But Corbin Carroll did hit an inside the park home run in Reno the other day, so we'll see. Jack in the comments says Gambo's reporting that Tyler Holton will come up, which does make some sense. The D-backs did call up Yanni Hernandez yesterday, so it wouldn't have really made sense to bring up another position player. So it sounds like Tyler Holton is going to be in that spot for a while. Michael says, I'll be shocked if Carroll's in a D-backs uniform before opening day 2023, which is very, very possible. I think that's a very reasonable
Yeah,
take.
I think
You
I
never
think
you never
Corbin
really know.
Carroll I think Corbin Carroll is the possibility to maybe take Luplo's spot if he for some reason gets moved at this deadline, and or if you're going to see him, it's probably going to be a September call up when the rosters expand. I don't. It's hard to
Yeah,
see with his little plate appearances he's had in the minor leagues, and albeit
yeah,
he's dominated everywhere he's gone. He's baseball's number 2 prospect, and I hope that we see him. And this is not me saying that, I don't want him to come up because I think he's probably more than ready at this point. But it's not this team's trend to bring those type of guys up until they see
yeah.
fit.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'm with you that I think the September call up situation is if we do see Corbin Carroll, it probably will take until then. I did think it was interesting. Derek Hall said on the radio like a week or two ago that depending on what the Diamondbacks do at the trade deadline, it's possible that we could see Corbin Carroll before September 1st. That was something that Derek Hall sort of alluded to in a radio interview. Certainly didn't make any guarantees or anything though. So I probably wouldn't read too much into that. But yeah, none of us really know at the end of the day whether we're going to see Corbin Carroll or not. All we can do is sort of hope for the best. Someone in the comments asked about Christian Serta, which I'll just kind of go over again real quick. We don't know that much, frankly, about Christian Serta. He's not on the Rays top 30 prospect list, which, especially for being a 19-year-old kid, makes it so there's just not going to be that much information available on the internet about him. But he was originally in the Dominican. The Tampa Bay Rays signed him on an international draft sort of deal. And then he came over to the States. He's currently playing in the Florida Complex League for the Tampa Bay Rays. And this season, the numbers look pretty good. We're talking about 69 plate appearances, but he's walked more than he's struck out. He's hitting .315 with a .983 OPS. So seems like he has a decent chance to stay behind the plate as a catcher. There's some power potential there from what we know and from what the numbers say. So we'll have to see how this looks in the future for Christian Serta, but he's certainly not a big name prospect. And if and when he does come up to the big league club, it's going to be a while. It's going to be, 2025, 2026 at least, probably before anything like that happens. So, but again, the storyline here isn't, the Diamondbacks traded David Peralta and got Christian Serta. The storyline is that the Diamondbacks decided to get something for David Peralta instead of nothing, which they were not going to sign him at the end of the year. There's really no way that was going to happen. And they also decided to clear some space for guys like Jake McCarthy, guys like Stone Garrett, maybe guys like Corbin Carroll. We'll have to see. And that's ultimately the storyline here.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about at the beginning of this. You don't have catching depth, and this is essentially just a lottery ticket. But you've also got 6 or 7 or 8 guys in the minor leagues that are all knocking at the door, right? They decide that David Peralta has given so much to this organization, to this team, and he's just like any other athlete. What David Peralta wants to do, whether he'll tell you that he wanted to stay in Arizona or not, he wants to go win. And why shouldn't he, right? He's about, like you said, about to turn 35. Why wouldn't he want to go at least make a run at it before, inevitably at some point, maybe 5 years, 3 years, whenever he decides to hang up the hat, he wants to find a place where he can possibly go win. The Rays have had some success. They're not, the Rays that we saw from a couple years ago or even last year, but they're in a good position to make a run at it. And if this is the best offer Mike Hazen found on the table, then he was going to send him somewhere where David Peralta could go chase what he wanted to go get a ring. And they got a flyer, right? They got somebody that they can have in the organization and see what they have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's a great point that David Peralta, I'm sure that as much as he would love to be in Arizona and to finish his career in Arizona, every player wants to win, right? Every player wants an opportunity to play in October. And David Peralta's only gotten that chance once in Arizona, which is really sad to look back and recognize. But between 2014 and 2022, the Diamondbacks only made the playoffs in 2017, and it was a wild card game, one of the best games in Diamondbacks history, the Archie Bradley triple, the whole thing. That was an epic wild card game. And then the Diamondbacks got swept by the Dodgers in the NLDS, and that was sort of the end of the story. It was not it was not pretty. But yeah, now David Peralta gets a chance to go over to Tampa and has something to compete for. The Rays this year, Jacob, are 54-47. They are currently tied with the Seattle Mariners in second place in the wild card race. So the Toronto Blue Jays are in first right now. They're 55-45. And then both Seattle and Tampa Bay are 54-47, just a game and a half out. And believe it or not, the Baltimore Orioles are the team knocking on the door.
So surprising.
in the American League, which is pretty wild. They're only 2.5 games behind the Rays. But it appears, just looking at the standings, unless you believe that the Orioles are about to come and beat Tampa or beat Seattle or something, it appears that the Rays are in pretty good position to not win the division. The New York Yankees, I think it's pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered at this point. The Yankees are going to win the AL East. But Tampa Bay has a really good chance to make the playoffs on a wild card team. And so I think it's going to be a lot of fun for Peralta to get that opportunity. Anthony says, Jacob and Jesse, would you guys be willing to give up some of our young hitting prospects for an established pitcher like Pablo Lopez? I mean, if Pablo Lopez is on the table, I'd be willing to do a fair amount.
That's tough. Because I feel like we've invested so much in watching these position players find their stride in the minor leagues. But there's a lot of them. I mean, you just have a plethora at this point. I'm not sure what gets a deal for Pablo Lopez done, but I think if you're Mike Hazen, you certainly listen with the fact that you're not going to be able to get all of these guys time at all.
Yeah. No, you're really not. The D-backs have a massive traffic jam here. I would be pretty surprised if something like Pablo Lopez happened. I mean, the D-backs would have to. You're talking about trading Alec Thomas and Corbin Carroll at that point. Honestly, you're probably going to have to include one of those two guys in order to get that conversation going. But yeah, I don't know if it's a Pablo Lopez, but I do think it's interesting what we've heard from Mike Hazen over the last few days. He has talked about how the D-backs really are targeting like talent that can help their team right now. Like they are not trying to build the farm system and just
Yeah.
add more and more prospects. That's not their goal right now, which I know some people are angry because it feels like this trade doesn't fit in with that, right? I mean, they just got a rookie league catcher who's 19 years old. I don't think the David Peralta trade was ever going to be the source of that sort of a deal, though. You weren't going to trade David Peralta and get major league ready talent that you were going to control for 4 or 5 years. That was never going to happen. But it is possible we see the Diamondbacks trade some of these chips that are closer to the big leagues and try to get players that are closer to the majors. And we'll have to see what that looks like the next few days.
Yeah, Mike Hazen's never been one to fully commit to a rebuild, even though
Sure.
we all have known that this has kind of been a rebuild. But Mike Hazen, he builds his farm system through the draft, and they've shown time in and time out that they can find quality talent in the MLB draft. And so he's not really ever looking to trade for prospects. And if you look at the track record, a lot of the prospects that he's traded for, they don't necessarily pan out. I mean,
Yeah.
that is something that you can find. It's on the record. He's not exactly made the best trades for guys that aren't in the major leagues already. I think Mike Hazen kind of took the world by storm when in his first year he traded for JD Martinez. And now everybody's been waiting for that move
Yeah.
every single day since then, right? They're waiting for that next JD Martinez trade. But I don't think Mike Hazen has a need to make that trade right now. Now
No.
he's waiting to see all of the talent that he's drafted come up, and then eventually he'll evaluate and make the moves for major league ready players. But players like Christian Walker, Merrill Kelly, David Peralta, they've got roles in a rebuild, right? They're your stopgap at that point. So I'll be curious to see what he does in the next couple days. I'm sure he's listening to just about everything, though.
Yeah, yeah. His phone is absolutely, I mean, he is probably taking every single call that he receives right now. I don't think anything is off the table for the
No,
D-backs in the next few days. Which makes this really interesting. I mean, honestly, Jacob, I could see the D-backs doing absolutely nothing for the remainder of this time before the trade deadline, or I could see them trading Christian Walker and Joe Mantiply and Ian Kennedy.
yeah,
Maybe there's a team willing to deal for Zach Davies, even though he's still working his way back from injury. There is a broad range of outcomes over the next few days as far as what the Diamondbacks do. So, yesterday on the show, we asked the question, if you set the over under to 2.5 on number of major league players that the Diamondbacks trade this deadline. I guess I haven't asked you this, Jacob. You would take the over?
I would take the over.
Interesting.
I I don't know. It just feels like a lot of the guys that you can trade right now are at their peak value, right? You look at a guy like Christian Walker, and he might be at his peak value right now. He's the best defensive first baseman in baseball, and he mashes home runs, right? Like what team wouldn't want a guy, even if it's just coming off the bench, that's hit 24 home runs this year? I saw the Astros are looking for a first baseman right now. They're in talks for Josh Bell, but I would say behind
Sure.
Josh Bell, is there a better first baseman that you can find that's controlled for 2 more years?
Yeah, it's a fair
I
point.
mean, so I think Christian Walker's a name that we see probably gets to go elsewhere. I would say I've floated this around, and I know that I might get shunned for even putting this into the ether. But
Uh-oh.
is Merrill Kelly's value ever going to be higher than it is right now either?
Yeah,
And
it's a
it's
fair point. I just think the Diamondbacks are gonna ask for so much that I don't know if any team is gonna be willing to go there. But you're right, the value is probably not higher than it
yeah.
is right now.
So if you look at what the Padres shipped off for Manea, and I know Manea is younger than Merrill, but Manea pitched 172 innings last year and had somewhat of, like, I think it was like a 3.9 or a 3.8 ERA.
Something like that. Yeah.
Merrill Kelly's on pace for, what were the numbers you put out on Twitter the other day? It was like 200
He's on
innings.
pace for 200 innings. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, he has like an ERA just over 3, like a 1.15 whip. The numbers look really, really good for him.
And he's controlled for 2 more years.
He is controlled through 2025, so 3 more years
Three
after
more
this one.
years. 3 more years. And so what's stopping you from trying to ask for, and if you don't get it, then that's fine, but what's stopping you from
Yeah.
trying to ask for a couple organizations, maybe two of their top 10 prospects, maybe a top 5 prospect in an organization and a couple fillers. I mean, the Greinke trade, I've heard that it didn't go through, or that it wasn't going to go through if Josh Rojas wasn't even a piece in that trade.
Right.
So you just never know what you're going to get, right? Like so I think if you're Hazen, you have to listen to everything. And that could lead to over 2.5 of these guys heading
Yeah.
on the road.
It's possible. It's possible. Well, Jacob takes the over. I take the under. Jeff Weiser yesterday on the show took the under. So let us know what you think in the comments or on Twitter. I'm curious what all you have to say, but we really don't know. I mean, these next few days really could be very, very busy for the Diamondbacks. So certainly keep it locked here. It's a PHNX. We'll have all of the updates. We'll have these fun emergency shows for you whenever these deals go down. So be sure to keep following us and pay attention to whenever we decide to go live at the drop of a hat, like sort of happened today. So Jacob, thanks for hopping on.
No problem.
I believe is
No
this your first official appearance on the PHNX Diamondback show?
Well, with you, yeah, but I've done a few shows with Derek.
You did a few with Derek.
Derek asks me to come on every once in a while.
There you go. There you go. Well, you haven't seen the last of Jacob Franklin on the PHNX Diamondbacks podcast. So big thank you to Jacob for hopping on, and big thank you to all of you in the comments for joining us today. It's fun to be able to hop on here and just kind of get the instant reaction, all of the emotions that come with dealing a player like David Peralta, which I know there were quite a few. So overall, this is a sad day. Seeing a guy like David Peralta move on, but I think it's also exciting that he gets to go to Tampa Bay and hopefully has an opportunity to contend for something meaningful, a little bit more meaningful than what he would be able to contend for here in Arizona. So certainly best of luck to David Peralta moving forward. We wish him all the best. We'll be back tomorrow with our post-series show. It'll be me and Michaela on the post-series show tomorrow. Hopefully the Diamondbacks are able to get a win against Atlanta today. That game yesterday was a little bit rough at times. So the Atlanta Braves are a much better team
Not the cleanest
than
baseball game. Not the cleanest baseball game.
Not the cleanest baseball game. But the Braves are a much better team than the Nationals, and I think the D-backs caught the Giants at a pretty good time too. So hopefully the D-backs are able to bounce back and get things moving in the right direction. But until then, for Jacob Franklin, my name is Jesse Friedman. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back with you tomorrow.